Bitcoin, the urgency of getting to one Bitcoin. Because I think that people are going to completely miss this idea, this meme that I'm trying to create, which is get to one Bitcoin. I'm going to smoke a cigar while we talk about it. Get to one Bitcoin is extremely important, not because the number one has a significance to it, although it does, but that's not really the reason. But getting to one Bitcoin is extremely important. Beautiful cigar. The getting to one Bitcoin is extremely important because of the rarity of the asset and the time that we have right now to secure the hardest, toughest asset on earth. The getting to one Bitcoin is important because there are 55 million millionaires in the world and there are only 21 million Bitcoin. The getting to one Bitcoin is important because Bitcoin is currently 27, 25, 28, $29,000, and it won't be there for long. You have a certain moment in history to actually secure your one Bitcoin. I believe the way that Bitcoin works is that it prices out people. So far we have priced out worldwide low class. We have priced out, pretty much the Eastern or the third world middle class. Now we're pricing out the Western middle class, because $30,000 to put into an asset for a Western middle class person is not easy. It is not an easy thing to do. I'm going to move this ashtray over here. It's not an easy thing to do. It is very, very difficult, and it will prove to become more and more difficult. So getting to one Bitcoin is extremely important because next cycle, I believe we price out Western or worldwide low single-digit millionaires. And then in the next cycle after that, we price out, if we say, I don't know, $7 to $20 million range. Because think about it, when I say we're going to price them out, what I'm talking about is this. If you're worth $2 million and you've got that $2 million in property and Bitcoin is $300,000 a Bitcoin, it is really tough to actually liquidate that much money out of your property portfolio or your equity portfolio because of taxes and all this other stuff. It's really tough to liquidate that in order to purchase a Bitcoin. It's just tough. Whereas when Bitcoin is $700,000 a coin, someone worth $7 million, you now got to liquidate 700 grand to put into an asset that you don't know much about because you didn't spend the time doing the research, getting the knowledge, actually understanding what it is, understanding why scarcity is the most important thing of any asset on earth. You're screwed. You're not going to do it. You're not going to do it. It takes time, right? It takes time. As bullish as I am, it took me from March to November to fully sell down my gold position in 2020. It took me until then to really build up my Bitcoin position because I was still learning. I got it, right? Because of 16, 17 years at that point of experience in markets and investments, but it still took me that amount of time to understand Bitcoin. Sure, I got it, but the understanding, the conviction building takes time. And most people are not allowing themselves the time to do that. They're basically trying to say, right, what I'll do is it will just click one day and I'll get into it and that'll be it. And if I need to get into it, I'll get into it. And it just doesn't work like that. You have to actually understand it. Now, the good news is that most people in the world are silly enough to loan their right to have a conviction to other people, and these people are called asset managers. So they trust someone else's conviction. And the beautiful thing about what's going on in Bitcoin is you're going to have 500 to 1,000 people in the world make all the decisions for $100 trillion of capital coming up soon. So, and the beautiful thing about that is that they have teams of hundreds of people around them that are going to spend all day, all night, all weekend, everything figuring out this asset, and they will understand it because they understand true scarcity. If BlackRock didn't understand true scarcity, they would not have bought up farmland or forest land rather when they started promoting ESG. If they didn't understand scarcity, they wouldn't be buying up single-family homes. They understand scarcity. It's about to be applied to Bitcoin. So then you ask someone like, why haven't you got to 1 Bitcoin yet? And by the way, there's so many people that are struggling, working hard every single day, earning a living to get to 1 Bitcoin. I want to applaud every single one of you because that's extremely important. That's what you need to do for your life, right? We all have different journeys in life at the end of the day. And my journey has been very, very different to someone else's journey. But ultimately, our goal is to exchange our physical labor for financial currency, energy, right? We exchange our physical energy, which is our labor, for our financial energy, which is our currency. And then our job is to maintain the value of that energy into the future so we can spend it at a later date. That's the goal of every human being on earth. I don't care whether you are a multi-billionaire or whether you are on the street and homeless. That's the goal. So if that's the goal, then you need to understand that every single person is going to be chasing Bitcoin. Because if that is the goal for every single person, then they will be seeking the hardest asset on earth at some point. Might not be straight away, might not be this year, might not be in 5 years, might not be in 10 years. But they will be seeking the hardest asset on earth. How do we know that? Because humanity always has. There is a reason why real estate is a $330 trillion market, whereas the stock markets worldwide are, let's say just shy of 200 trillion. Because real estate is a harder asset than the stock market. And there's a reason why gold's market cap is 13 trillion compared to everything else, because these other assets are harder than gold. Humanity, somehow, some way, we have taken our ability to perceive hardness of an asset and actually allocate our savings and wealth into it. We know that if we get into real estate, it's going to be a lot more stable than if we get into the stock market. We know that if we get into the stock market, it's going to be a lot more profitable than if we get into gold. How do we know these things, right? This is human instinct and human nature, and Bitcoin is coming to take advantage of that, because human instinct and human nature, I don't care how long they print money and tell you that right is left and left is right. I don't care what they do. At some point, human instinct takes over. The fiat system is basically designed to print enough money to tell you that your human instinct is wrong. That's what it is, and it doesn't last forever. It doesn't last forever. We've got people waking up all over the place, right? We got people who went left because they were told to go left, figuring out, oh no, maybe I shouldn't have done that. They're coming back to the right. We got people who were told, the best thing that will make you happy is go grab a job and work for the rest of your life, even though it goes against your biology. Figuring out that maybe this isn't the thing that's going to make me happy, and the fact that 50% of my peers in this cohort are on antidepressant drugs isn't a good thing, and they're coming back. You cannot print money for long enough to keep humanity away from its natural instinct. It's not going to happen. It will bounce back, and the clapback will be harder than how far you try to push it, because the clapback is always quicker. The clapback, while if it took 40 years to go one way, it's going to take 5 to 10 years to come back the other way. And the clapback will be tough. And the clapback will be tough because rebalancing is tough. And that's what Bitcoin is to the fiat system. The fiat system is designed to tell you to go against your human instinct. It's designed to tell you that the labor that you have, that you converted into financial currency or monetary energy, is not valuable. Therefore, you should spend it. It's here to tell you that whatever impulse you have to buy and spend, you should take it. That's not natural human instinct. We have been scouring the earth and accumulating resources for use by future generations since the dawn of humanity. You don't think that is inside every cell of every human being, of every DNA strand of every human being? That is the human spirit. And that's what Bitcoin speaks to. Bitcoin speaks to the human spirit that is inside every single one of us, the desire to have a better future. And fiat doesn't. And when people realize that not only does fiat not do that, but real estate doesn't do that, the stock market doesn't do that, gold doesn't do that, because the supply levers can be controlled on those assets. When people finally realize that, the clapback to the fiat system is going to be so hard and so heavy. Why do you think BlackRock is getting involved at this point? Remember, while BlackRock, yes, absolutely is tied in with the fiat system and tied in with the US dollar, they are a business. And if the US dollar is going down and is going to be replaced at some point with something else, they want to be at the forefront of that. They are a business, right? They are a business. The US dollar and BlackRock are completely separate. While they might be incentivized right now to work together, they are completely separate. One is a business, the other is a government currency. And so if I can get close to the government currency to profit, that's what I'm going to do. And then if it changes and I need to get close to Bitcoin, that's what I'm going to do, because I'm a business. Their job is to generate profits for its shareholders. And if the only way they can do that is by getting close to the asset of choice, then that's what they will do. That's why I can trust human beings and corporations on the incentives that we create. And we have created an incentive for these institutions and for these people to move towards Bitcoin. Well, firstly, the first incentive as far as the US dollar goes is that Bitcoin will actually help the US dollar expand. Because if this value gets pumped into Bitcoin, the value per Bitcoin goes up, people start borrowing against that, they can take that credit, put it into their bank account, and the banks can now lend out 20-1 against it. So there is a huge advantage in the midterm for banks to get involved and start allowing Bitcoin custody and Bitcoin products and service products, borrowing products, lending products. They will be working it out. If you don't think that BlackRock has a team of a minimum of 20 people right now working to figure out how do we lend against Bitcoin one way or the other, what's the best way for it, you're a moron. You're $1,000 net worth, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a moron. If you think BlackRock is stupider than you, you're a moron. This is no way to say it. BlackRock is way smarter than me. BlackRock is way smarter than you, and BlackRock is way smarter than every single person on Twitter. Why? Because power moves in silence. And that's what BlackRock has been doing. We just seen internal studies of BlackRock coming out saying that, the best allocation from a risk-reward perspective is 84-point-something% in Bitcoin. What are we talking about here? You think these are just studies that are just like unsanctioned studies that are written up like that literally have a marking on top of them saying this is only for private client and internal use only, this is not for public posting and it's being leaked? What are we talking about here? And in the face of all of that, you don't want to get to 1 Bitcoin. There are people out here saying they don't need to get to 1 Bitcoin. They don't need to rush. They don't need to get into one. They don't need to find their way to 1 Bitcoin. And I want to tell you that you got one chance in human history. That's the rarity of this asset. That is the rarity of this asset. You got one chance in human history. No matter how many people are born in the future, no matter how many people die, no matter how much wealth is passed down to future generations, you have one chance in human history to get to 1 Bitcoin. because there's 8 billion people, whatever it is, on the earth, 9 billion people on the earth. There are 55 million millionaires on this planet, and there is only 21 million Bitcoin. No matter how many people are born, if we manage to turn around the population crisis that we're going to have with the amount of the lack of babies being born, if we manage to turn that around, then great. They will still be in a world where there is only 21 million Bitcoin. And I have, by the way, I have a few of them. So, you know, I've got a couple people's worth. So it's like, at that point, what do you, if there is an army of people that is buying up Bitcoin, the HODL rate keeps going up. What I mean by the HODL rate is how many people just hold their Bitcoin no matter what the hell happens to the price. Right? The price is set at the margins. The price is set at the margins of the supply, not the total supply. So you have to be very, very careful at that. The price, and this is why I'm going to do another video on Bank of America's bull market multiple. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe, because I'm going to be doing another video on that coming soon, because it's very, very important to understand how capital coming into a market affects the price of an asset. So you have to get to 1 Bitcoin. The incentives are aligning too well here. We are about to price out low single-digit millionaires in the West, or worldwide actually, because millionaires are worldwide, right? We're about to price out low single-digit millionaires in the next upcoming 2024 cycle. After that, in the 2028 cycle, we'll price out people between $7 and $20 to $30 million. And then after that, we'll price out the ultra high net worth, right? Ultra high net worth, I believe, is something like $36 million of net worth. And once that gets priced out, and what I mean by priced out is these people can't afford to buy 1 Bitcoin. That's what I mean. So, and I'm not talking about price movements. I'm not talking about what might happen after it hits a certain peak, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, there's ebbs and flows and everything, especially as an asset is maturing. But we're getting to a point where with an ETF coming, it changes the game. It changes the game completely, because with an ETF coming, you have the ability from anywhere in the world, in a wrapper, in a environment that you feel completely comfortable with, to get to 1 Bitcoin with a click of a button. You can sell out of your Tesla stock and get into 1 Bitcoin in 2 seconds, and you can start sucking value out of the stock market. This is huge for Bitcoin. The Bitcoin ETF is the single most important moment for Bitcoin adoption since Bitcoin itself. That's my opinion. So I think that we need to do better at helping people understand why they need to get to 1 Bitcoin. So I'm always going to be saying that, get to 1 Bitcoin, get to 1 Bitcoin, get to 1 Bitcoin. And of course, I understand that if you live in a third world country, maybe it's not 1 Bitcoin, it's something else. But the 1 Bitcoin is important. And by the way, the next cycle, it will probably change. It'll probably change because most people won't be able to afford 1 Bitcoin. I'm talking about, when I say most people, I'm talking about single-digit millionaires. I'm talking about people with $300,000 not being able to afford to buy 1 Bitcoin because you got your assets tied up. What are you going to do? Sell a quarter of a house to get into 1 Bitcoin? You're not going to do that. You're not going to do that. You can't do that, right? You got debt on the house. You got all this other stuff. So, yeah, we're about to enter a very, very weird territory when it comes to the price of Bitcoin and who it's going to price out. But as the price goes up, the demand will go up. So you might be getting to 0.5 Bitcoin. And ultimately, the only thing that matters is how much of the Bitcoin network do you own? But getting to 1 Bitcoin is extremely, extremely important. There's a lot of people that want me to reevaluate 1 Bitcoin, whether it should be 0.5 Bitcoin or whether it should be whatever. I won't be doing that. You have to get to 1 Bitcoin. It should be, if you are someone who's been living in the West for the last bear market and you have not gotten to 1 Bitcoin, you will kick yourself in the next 40 years. It's just as simple as that. You will kick yourself. There's been many opportunities with the Bitcoin price at 25 to 30,000 to get to 1 Bitcoin in the last bear market. If you have not done that, your progeny will hate you and you will kick yourself. Maybe not hate you, that's a bit too much. Your progeny will be disappointed in you, right? Everyone worries about legacy, right? Really the thing you need to worry about is your progeny. Your progeny is more important because it is the future. And if the future is built on Bitcoin and you don't own enough, how will your progeny be able to compete in a world where there are people who own more Bitcoin and will be able to outcompete them because of they'll be able to influence the way that the direction of the market goes because they own more Bitcoin? Your progeny needs something to build on, right? The people that are successful today are the ones who had a property portfolio, the ones who had a stock portfolio to lean on to create the things that they wanted to create. That is what Bitcoin is today, and you need to get to 1 Bitcoin. And this, whether you get to 1 Bitcoin or not, which I think you should get to 1 Bitcoin, there are only 3 rules to Bitcoin, and that is step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulously wealthy.